all the bits that are crap. So, all right. Ooh, blimey. I'll sit down here. I can see the intro.
Okay.
Well, good evening, Mr. Goldsmith, or if I may call you Dad. It's very nice to see you again in the studio.
You just about qualify.
Just about qualify, yes. We greatly enjoyed reading WW2 SE20 and Me.
Thank you.
And very, very enjoyable book. And it's aroused, I understand, some interest in the local area around SE20.
Yes, and also in Australia and America, which surprised me more than somewhat. But
wow.
Okay.
Well, I wasn't the only person in America who bought a copy. That's good. And he wasn't the only one in Australia. So that's nice to know. In my sort of somewhat tongue-in-cheek introduction, I was talking about the kids being interested in what happens next. So we haven't really got a title for this next book yet. So we're sort of still pending title.
Yeah.
But what's it about? You know.
Well, the title, it's got to have gold or Goldie, because when my father, also a journalist, was in newspapers, people referred to him variously as Bill and Goldie. And it's when in my movements around the media, I gradually became Goldie instead of Alan or the EAU. And as I got older, of course, I became Goldie the Oldie, which I don't mind, because let's admit it, I am old. At present, in July 2023.
Yes.
I'm reached the age of 92.
92.
And to go back to what happened at the end of WW2, the war came to an end, of course. And I've got a picture here, which you won't recognise, but it's a group of people, 24 people, and it was taken on the beach at Eastbourne on July the 1st, 1946, and it was the exact date, I know. And the scruffiest of those 24 people is me, because I was 15 years of age, and I was just 6 months into my first period of work.
Yeah.
And that's where it continues. The book that I've just within a sort of a gnat's crotchet of finishing is divided into two parts. One of which is I've called Nuggets, and they are stories, golden stories that I picked up on the way. Most of it is autobiographical, and it covers me right through to the day I finished full-time work, which was in I don't know. It was a long time ago. I was 66 when I retired, and it's a progression, really. I've always been fascinated by the printing process and the business of setting up type and making pages, and of course when I first started it was all done by compositors, and you weren't allowed to touch the type or you'd cause a strike. It was a very messy business and ink everywhere, but gradually that was phased out, and over the years we got to the stage where we could do pages on computer, whole pages on computer, full screen makeup, and it took the compositors more or less out of the picture, and reporters wrote their copy and put it into an electronic basket, and you as a sub-editor took it out of that basket, you put it in, you treated it, sorted it out, put it into a page, wrote the headline, made sure that it could fit. But absolutely marvellous. When I was a youngster, I always wanted one of those John Ball printing outfits, you know, with the rubber letters.
Yeah.
I was fascinated by the idea
John Ball
of
#1,
printing
yes.
something, you know, and
Yes.
again and again. I never got one. It was-
But let me take you back, Dad, to the end of the first volume of the
Yeah.
book, and it's sort of like one of those terrible interviewers' questions where they say, like, you've just finished your autobiography. What's it about? You know, it's not a great question, but we see you at the end of the book, and it's very moving. The end of the book, and where you sort of leave the sort of cocoon of SE20, and off you go to do your national service.
Yeah, that was it.
So, does the book talk about your national service times? I think that's
does.
an interesting
It does.
period.
Because when I started my national service, I had already been employed full time for 3 years and 3 months, and acquired a lot of experience. I could also do shorthand and all the rest of it. And that proved to be useful because after a short while in the army, I got shunted into a company office as a potential clerk. That seemed a bit dull, and an opportunity came along to join the Forces Broadcasting Service, which for which I was qualified. And
So what, I guess the skill that got you into the company offices was you could do typing and shorthand at that
yes,
point.
yeah, and a reasonable amount of more sort of general experience than most people of my age then, because I'd already covered courts and council meetings and political meetings and all the rest of it. All the bits and pieces, the lifeblood of a local newspaper, and you get to know a lot of things. You pick up a lot of knowledge on the way.
Right.
It's what a colleague of mine once called ragbag knowledge.
Yeah. A random
It's not.
sort of-
It's not structured like you would do at school, but you just pick it up and it sticks. Yeah,
Yes.
and you think, oh yes, you remember odd facts, which makes you an absolute whiz at quizzes later on.
So working in the company office, though, must have had an advantage in terms of, I don't know, for example, seeing postings that were coming up.
Oh yes, yeah. Because I saw and was dealing with, I had the names of people with whom I'd been to school and I knew, and it's so and so. He's always going to Germany. Yeah. Oh, he's going to Austria, or he's going to Hong Kong, or whatever. Yeah. And I thought, no, I should be doing something like that. And so the Forces Broadcasting thing came along, and although my immediate superior, the sergeant there, said, no, you're going to stay in the office. When he went on leave, I managed to sneak into the commanding officer with some other stuff. Oh, by the way, sir, I'm interested in, and he
Very
was
nice.
a great guy. I said, yeah, go for it. And it was through him that I managed to get the original interview up at Eaton Square in London, and eventually found myself in Trieste in Italy. Well, it wasn't Italy. Trieste was a free territory. It wasn't in Italy, and it wasn't in Yugoslavia. It was a potential trouble spot where World War III nearly started. But,
So nowadays it's in the sort of northeast of Italy,
yeah.
bordering what, Moldova or one of those countries?
Yeah,
Moldavia, I don't know what it is.
one of those funny places.
One of those funny
Ends up
places.
in IA,
Right, but at the time it was part of.
It was
the
a free
newly
territory.
formed- Oh, so it wasn't even part of Yugoslavia.
No. It was free territory with 5,000 British troops, 5,000 American troops, and a British radio station and an American radio station serving the forces.
So you talked about Forces Broadcasting. What was Forces Broadcasting about?
It was supplying entertainment on the radio, because at that time there was the General Overseas Service of the BBC, but not everybody could get that. That was, and it was on. I think we were on medium wave or something like that, and it was a local yeah, we I don't know how far you could actually hear the station in the UK. But,
Really?
Yeah, but you had to be very lucky and have a reasonably decent set. But there you go. But no, that was just the Forces Broadcasting bit, where you did news reporting, you did sports commentaries, you did a bit of acting, you did a bit of everything really. And I also produced my print skill, the weekly programme paper that used to go out to the troops. But
About how many troops were there in Trieste?
5,000 British,
5,000
5,000 American.
Right.
So yeah, it's a fair number of and British families were there as well. And anyway, that was Trieste, but I left there, went back to the Pension and the News.
Yes.
But shortly after that, went to the Eastbourne Gazette in down on the south coast, and from there, you to the Croydon Times. And after that to the Derbyshire Times, and back to the Eastbourne Gazette, and then I got a phone call because ITV had by then started, and some of my chums from Forces Broadcasting were already in the ITV setup, and I went to work for Television Wales and the West, and that was a great experience. And
Right, we could take a little break there, Dad. You can have a cup of tea.
right.
I'd put in a nice cutaway of TWW logo or something to cover the jump edit. So who's ever editing this can make note of that.
Yeah.
We'll give the editor some tea.
Yeah. Oh, now this is
nice cup of tea, that.
what's it? Is it Thai food?
Thai food?
Thai food.
You only get an oo with Thai food.
Yeah.
No, that picture you held up, we'll get a nice, if you haven't scanned it or if you've got the original or whatever, if you get that to me, then I can cut that in. I just do a cutaway to that shot, and I can do a little sort of zoom in on your scruffy urchin face underneath Eastbourne Pier. Right.
Yeah.
Just.
Good, watch
Okay.
out. Kick it over. All right.
Are you all right now? Hey! Okay. Do you want me to put it out of the way?
Yeah, put it out of the way, otherwise I'm
You're right.
Bound
You're not
to.
parched now. If I slate your slate your thirst.
Yeah.
All right, lovely. We'll carry on now.
okay.
Okay, so television. Okay,
Yeah.
right, let's do that right. Television Wales in the West. So I don't think that exists now. Did that become Harlech or?
It became Harlech Television. Historically, it was the first ITV station to lose its licence.
Interesting.
This was under the ITA, the Independent Television Authority. And I still, like many other people, I still don't know really why they lost the licence, but because they had done the ITA a great favour in saving it from having one of its minor stations go bankrupt. And TWW stepped in and spent a lot of money saving the face of the ITA, and also making my particular job very, very complicated.
Yes.
But anyway, that's all in the past. And
So the ITV stations were. This is starting in what sort of year? This is like early 60s. ITV started?
ITV started in 1955.
Wow. That's old.
With
time
the
ago.
famous night when Grace Archer got killed.
Oh, is that?
And you had the main centres of population receiving ITV first, and then gradually they filled in the areas that somebody once called the coastal stations.
Right.
And
so the early ones would have been
like Southern Television,
Southern Television, that's right. We had Southern.
and TWW, and then
we had Southern down in
like
Sussex.
Anglia Television, and Border Television, Grampian Television, Scottish Television, Ulster.
So London, I remember as a kid, we had London Weekend Television,
Yes.
which was only on the weekends.
Yes, that's right.
Bizarrely.
Then,
But during the week, I don't know what.
During the week, you had Associated Rediffusion.
Wow. You don't know anything about that.
Because London was such a big centre and potentially a great earner, it was
Yeah.
deemed unfair that one contractor should have all the cake.
Right.
So it was a complete,
Biggest viewership, biggest advertising revenue,
yeah,
etc. Right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that made
But
sense.
ITV was fascinating, but I did move on to an experimental station, which was called Pay Television, and that was under the influence or guardianship of the post office, and we were launched by the then Postmaster General Anthony Wedgwood Benn as an experimental service. And we were the fourth channel. At that time there was BBC One, BBC Two, ITV and Pay Television. And we were available as an experimental service in Westminster and Southwark in London. But this was all through cable, through a wire network,
Right.
which there
was no infrastructure for that, presumably.
Well, there was. Yeah, it was already built in because the television reception in various parts was a bit dodgy,
Oh, I see.
and the was it Associated was it Rediffusion or British Relay Wireless, various other companies.
Oh, they'd laid wire.
Yeah.
Ah, I did not know that.
Through wire. But anyway, I was in Pay TV as a virtually program controller.
Wow.
Sounds very powerful, but it was one of those stations where you did everything. We did have an announcing staff, and if they got stuck in a traffic jam, somebody would have to go in and do the announcing job, and occasionally it was me. But it was great fun. But we were eventually killed off by the then government, and I won't go into the political situation. But we felt it was very unfair that we were killed off.
But this was, you see, like Americans are very familiar with the idea of paying, well, I suppose British people now as well, with having premium channels that you pay for.
Yeah.
But I think Pay TV, as I recall, was literally a sort of coin in the slot type arrangement.
Yeah, it was outdated even before it started with the
Yes.
coin in the slot arrangement, because that
Like
does not
like
work.
a gas meter.
doesn't work really. But but Pay TV had almost started in various places before it came to London and the studios in Dean Street in Soho, which I think you went to.
Yes.
It was fun. It was also hard work, but that's always been my philosophy. If you, I'll work as hard as anybody, and all the time it's fun. All the time that you enjoy it. You know. So after Pay TV, I went back to newspapers, and so it's not so much, it's a progression. The book, when we get a title for it, is about the gradual change of the way of producing newspapers. It's a way I went to and worked for various newspapers. But it's also about some of the wonderful characters that you meet and you work with. Some of them absolutely outrageous, some of them very funny, some of them absolutely hopeless. But they all make an impression. And I've worked, as you know, with Terry Pratchett at one stage when he was just a beginner, which was a very interesting young man, and various other people, including and authors who are capable of churning out any sort of book. Science fiction, romance, racing novels, detectives, anything you like, Greek tragedy in blank verse. Yeah, I'll churn it out,
Yeah.
And they're just professional word merchants, but they're fascinating people.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed their company. And there's one guy in particular knew as Windy. His name was Gale. Used to sit in the office after hours, banging away on an old Imperial Good Companion typewriter and writing all this romantic stuff, for women's magazines. And he had a lot of stuff published through his agent. And he'd be sitting there with his phone on the end of his nose, banging away, and finish some wonderfully, florid type of description, then have a scratch, light another fag, and carry on. You see.
Yeah.
But my father was much the same. In the 30s, late 20s and early 30s, my father wrote books for a thing called My Threepenny Library, which was sold through Woolworths. All the Woolworths stores had My Threepenny Library, and he used to receive £25 for one of these books, and he could write one in a weekend. Earning £25 in a weekend in the sort of late 20s, early 30s. That was really going some. But so we went to Australia, as you know. We came back. But the work has always been interesting, and I did actually, after retirement, I did carry on. I got called in, can you come and do some subbing? And because by then I'd got the skill on the Apple Mac computers and the Quark Express program, and I get called in, can you do an evening shift? Can you do it? And very lucrative, and but also good fun. I love newspapers and always have, and doing pages and doing things that printers used to do, but you can do it now on your own, and it's I've always been fascinated by it. So it's been newspapers, radio, newspapers, television, newspapers, a big sort of newspaper sandwich all the way through. Weekly newspapers, daily newspapers as well. Totally different way of working, but again, exciting, and you have the brain working fast. Yeah. So it's been great fun, but there's always the characters as well. That's always added to it, and I suppose I became a bit of a character myself as well. Hence Goldie the Oldie. Hello, Goldie.
No, but I think it's very interesting though, your career, in the sense that you've seen all those changes in technology.
Oh yeah.
From sort of like hot metal through to full
full page makeup.
Yeah. Pretty remarkable. You managed to pick up things like Quark Express. That compared to sort of like stone subbing or whatever, is like very, very different kind of technology. I mean, unbelievable. Yeah. And some of the things that you've taught me over the years about the origins of certain things like uppercase and lowercase comes from printing technology. Yeah. The whole idea of punctuation comes from points, and I've read, I don't know if it's true or not, that the way that we punctuate things, where we put full stops at the end, it's to do with them not breaking off, when you print. I think we've lost a lot of that connection with the actual printing presses. It's sort of everything's now electronic publishing and digital.
We progressed one way, but we've gone back a certain way.
And how do you mean by that? We've gone back.
You would think that with the speed up of technology and the fact that the photographer can take a picture and so developing the film and then printing it and all the rest of it. Could take a picture on a digital camera and just send it to the office, just like that. Boom! He took this picture 2 minutes ago. Here it is, ready to go onto the page. But for many papers, particularly local papers, and I'm very fond of local papers, it's gone backwards because every town in the past, every town had a local newspaper and its own printing works and its own print machine, the big, noisy thing. And gradually those machines have been lost because the machine that's standing on its own, not printing that particular day, is wasting money. And gradually more and more local papers have done away with their own press and they go to a central point to have their newspaper printed. And if you the papers, say from the south coast, have all their printing done at, say, Portsmouth. That unit in Portsmouth is printing papers 5 or 6 days a week, and you have to wait your turn. And if you're a local paper, Eastbourne, Hastings, Worthing, wherever, the deadline becomes further and further away. In other words, I can remember when something happened on a Thursday or even on a Friday morning and it went into the paper, the following day, the local paper. Can't happen now. There are papers which have appear or published on a Friday, but their deadline is on a Tuesday. Anything that happens after Tuesday doesn't get into that particular edition of the paper because it has to be already made up and it's waiting its turn to be printed. And that's a shame. You're losing some of the spontaneity.
Are people still buying local newspapers?
The numbers are going down, unfortunately. I can't quote figures, but the numbers are going down. And as a result, newspapers are employing fewer staff. I have a book here somewhere. It was a present when I left the Eastbourne Gazette in 1953, and all the editorial staff had signed it. And there are about a dozen signatures on there, and most of them were reporters. These days, you're lucky if you get one reporter and a sort of junior or school leaver, and that's it. They just don't have the resources to employ experienced reporting staff. If you look through your local paper, everything seems to have a byline on it. A byline is by so and so, and there's usually one or two, names keep cropping on all the different stories. But half the time, those stories were not sought out and from interviews and all this. They are the result of press handouts. The press handout business has grown, and news editors get and they'll give it to a junior and say, put a different nose on that. That's to change the intro. Substantially, most of the stuff has already been dished out.
So they say that nowadays most people get their news just from social media. They look on
social media
and
whatever, television,
Twitter or whatever, and television. Yeah,
television, and that's the great danger. I see it as dangerous.
What do you think is bad about that?
News from just one source is always a bit dangerous in that you tend to. You lose the ability to, or not the ability, but you lose the source of more than one point of origin or information. if you just watch, I'm not saying anything against BBC, there's plenty that can be said, but if you just watch BBC, you will get, and millions of people just get the BBC point of view, because no matter how impartial you try to be, there's always a point of view that comes across,
right?
And that is dangerous. So I try to watch BBC and ITV, but newspapers again are so expensive.
Yes.
That I remember when the Daily Telegraph used to cost 3 halfpence. That was a halfpenny more than most papers.
But your local newspapers, your Eastbourne Gazette, your Eastbourne Herald, or whatever, your Bexley Observer, those are not political newspapers. They're not pushing any particular party line or anything. They have to, I suppose, be sort of somewhere like neutral there.
Oh, you have to try to be neutral.
It's about local affairs, right?
Yeah. But local politics are always a hotbed of intrigue. And I always reckon when you're working in a local paper, if the Conservatives said your paper is all run by the Labour Party, and the Labour people would say, "Oh, your paper is under too much influence from the Conservative Party," and the Liberals would always moan anyway. But you reckon you're doing a reasonably good job then, because. No, local papers do try to be fairly neutral, but not always easy. And anyway. But I've been to lots of political meetings. I mean, when you used to go report Labour meetings, Conservative meetings, and I've even been to communist meetings. When the Communist Party had a seat or two in Parliament, and people like Harry Pollitt were, and Phil Pyratin was a great name from the Communist past.
But you've covered everything over the years. You've sport, and I think, I hope that there'll be some of the stories in there that about local boxing matches and covering soccer and the courts and various funny things that have happened. I'm sure I've read some of the pre material that I know you've not quite finished the book yet, but I've read a lot of the stuff, and I'm glad to see that it contains a lot of my favourite stories that you've told about various characters that you talk about over the years and various funny things that happen.
Oh yeah, and funny. I've not stood on a soapbox too much, but there are funny things that happen, and they're always worth relating. And the moment of great temptation when I found myself alone in the courtroom with some gold bars, because they'd all just gone. The court just went off for lunch, and the warrant officer who was in charge of the running of the actual court and looking after bits and pieces went off for lunch as well, and left £5,000 worth of gold just sitting on the clerk's desk.
Because that was part of the evidence.
That was part of the evidence, and I suddenly realised I'm here. The gold is there. East Croydon station is just up the road. I'd just been married and I couldn't afford a house, so moments of great temptation. But I just looked after it until the warrant officer returned, sweating somewhat because he had to run back from the cafe because he just realised what he'd done.
Right.
Those sort of things, things that happen at football matches, things that happen at boxing matches, and all that sort of stuff. And you get to know people. Penge at that time had a very active, very keen amateur boxing club, and I remember talking to one of the one bloke who was a second and said, "What do you actually do as a second?" He said, "I wipes away the blood and snot and tell him he's winning. That's it." Oh, that's what you do as a second. Wonderful people, and it's not, it's about people. People are in the main, they're lovely and they're helpful, and they're also funny, and if they know they're funny, they don't mind. It's
but local papers are always about, you've always said to me, it's about names and faces.
Names and faces, yes, yeah. That's what people like to see, their face in the paper and their name in the paper, and that's why, as a junior reporter, you're covering I don't know, just a local Christmas fair.
Yes.
You go around and you get all the women who helped, even the people in the kitchen. You get their names as well, because that was a good way of getting a cup of tea anyway. If you go,
Yes.
want all your names over. Oh yeah, mate. Get all those names and get them in the paper. Now, funnily enough, I came across somebody on Facebook the other day. Put in a copy of an article that appeared in the Pension Handley News and the Nord News in 1947. There was a report of a children's party, and it was about the best part of a column about this children's party. And I'd read through it, and I suddenly realised that I'd written it. I was 16 years old at the time.
Oh my God.
And, yes, I remember it because of a particular incident that I reported.
Did you report like who won the pass the parcel or something?
Yeah, well, everything, anything and everything. Get the names in. And
Because the principle was that if you've got a picture of a kiddie or their name, the parents will buy not one but maybe two copies of the
they'd buy
newspaper,
two, yeah.
because they'll give it to the grandparents and all the rest of it, right?
Oh yeah, and they'd send it off somewhere. Yeah, that was what it was all about. But it's also about being accuracy first, last, and always. And being unbiased, and trying to be unbiased, and those were the basics, and that's how I grew up with it. And
so above and beyond the technology, Dad, how do you think that journalism has really changed in any fundamental way? I mean, the principles of journalism, or principles, for example, of like page layout and stuff like that. I mean, it might be websites now as opposed to pen and paper and ink, or soot or whatever they printed it on. But are those sort of still the same in your opinion?
Well, you see, people say I'm a journalist always sounds very grand. Whereas if you say I'm a reporter, people say, oh yeah. And but I've done more reporting than everybody has a column in a paper somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a journalist, you see. And they're shoving their political opinions down other people's throats, and everybody, read so-and-so's column. Can those people, report council meetings, courts, inquests? Have they ever had any experience of that? Reporting funerals where you have to stand at the gate of the church, and get the names of the mourners as they come in. I've done that, and
Wow.
And some of the more, yes, one of the BBC presenters admitted that he had actually done that at one station. Oh yeah, I admired him. Yes, okay, you've done the full bit, not just sat there and turned out something and some thinky piece.
Right.
That's not the same as reporting. The good all-round reporter journalists, they're very rare indeed. And but I've worked with them, and they remain in the memory, and I'm very happy to have worked with them. And I've written about them, a lot of them, and some of the things they said and did. And
so you worked. Have you ever figured out how many different newspapers you've worked on over the years, or is it too many to count?
Oh, I could, I suppose. I haven't really settled down. I mean, one stage in Australia, when I was in the mainland, I did some part-time work with a paper called The Burwood Aeroplane, which was a wonderful title. But that was a free sheet. Now this is another thing. You see, the development of the free sheet.
The free sheet, yes.
The free distribution newspaper.
Like the Metro.
And well, Metro used to be waste paper. Now Metro has great influence. It's become accepted. There was always the assumption with a paid-for newspaper, with a proper circulation, the ABC, the Audited Bureau of Circulators, that you assume that because people buy the paper, they read it. They don't. Very often they buy it out of habit. Along comes the free distribution newspaper, and you have to your advertisers, you have to prove that people are reading it. Advertisers before were always so many people buy the paper, they must read it. If the paper is one that gets shoved through everybody's front door, free gratis and for nothing, you have then got to prove that it is read, and one of the ways you can do that is through competitions and that sort of thing. It never stays in the same place. It's always moving. Yeah, which proves that it's still alive. Thank heavens. There always will be local papers, but they will change, and they will. They may, please God, actually improve. But I've seen some bad ones. I've seen some good ones, but the bad ones can only get better, and you can get some. You get a lot of fun. It's been a fun journey anyway. It still is fun.
Are you glad? I don't know whether you consciously thought about being a journalist or whether it was something that just happened because your dad was a journalist.
Yeah, my dad was on the local paper, and I was always good at composition at school. The weekly composition at school, and always did well at that.
And are you glad that you did that as your career? Are you glad that?
Yes, I am glad. There are certain technical things that I was interested in. I was always interested in radio sets and that sort of electronic stuff, but I didn't have the knowledge or the inclination or bent for that sort of thing. On the other hand, I could always write, and the writing that I used to do at school, totally different from the writing you do when you go into an office. I mean, when we had, when I was in the Goldie the Oldie stage, and you used to get these potential school leavers coming and doing work experience, and they would turn up and on the Monday morning, and I'd be the only one there, and I'd say, come and sit down, and I'd be going through something on screen and explain what I'm doing, and I'd say, do you do well on English? And oh yes. Do you write to impress your teacher? And they say, oh yes, good. I say, well, I don't want to be impressed. I want to be informed. There's a difference. If you inform me properly, then I'll be impressed. But keep it the right way round. And there was just a little bit of simple advice.
So what about the old who, what, when, where, why?
Oh yeah, the 5 W's. Yeah. Who, what, where, when, why.
That's always going to be the same, really.
Well, when I started, newsprint was rationed, along with a lot of other things. And you had the 5 W's in the first sentence. Or at the very least in the first paragraph. You read stuff now in the Daily Mail or anything like that. They put one fact per paragraph and stretch it out, and it's a bit of a waste of space and a bit of a waste of time. Most stories can be if you can't say it in 200 words, don't say it. that was the old adage. Every newspaper had a grizzled old sub-editor who was in the room, and you get called up. Come over here. Sorry. What's this you've written there? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? And some of the more gutty old ones used to sort of make you feel a bit small, but they did it with the best of heart, and it's only through working on the paper you learn the difference.
You learn the difference, yeah.
Yeah, so even the local churches, why does one church have a reverend and the other one has a minister? Yeah, and
I one of the things that I treasure is an old book that your father won from some Band of Hope Temperance Society or something, somewhat ironic. But it is an old style English book from the early part of the 20th century. And what it contains a lot of, apart from sort of rather dry grammar stuff, is a lot of précis exercises. And as an English teacher in the States, this is a concept which is completely foreign to them. You talk about praise, they have no idea what you're talking about. And I always thought it was a marvelous way of getting kids to learn how to write, not because it's not about what you think or your beliefs or anything. It's not about free expression, which was all the rage when I was in school. It's like, just let them write, just let them write. It's like, no, if you're going to take something that's 500 words and turn it into 100 words, you've got to understand the 500 words, which ones are important, and cut it down to 100. And I think that's the sort of thing that you're talking about as a sort of a craft, the craft of journalism.
Well, yes, it's and there are again people I work with. They sort of thought in headlines and. And one character who came in to see us once and said, we've the local brewery just had a load of, this was near Christmas, and they just had a load of beer pinched off snatch of the dray, he said.
Oh my God.
They think in headlines.
They think in headlines.
They tend to, there's some lovely headlines. I mean, whole books have been produced with funny headlines. One of the best I liked was in the Dover Express, which said "Missing boy found in sandwich." They're all sorts of examples. And they're very often the result of writing headlines in a hurry. And you'll dust it out, and it's only later that it hits you. Oh God, why did I say that? But it happens, Everybody does it.
Well, it's very interesting, and I look forward to reading the whole thing. How far are you into it? When do you think it's going to be able to be published?
I'm just through 70,000 words, which sounds a lot.
And the first book was how many?
The first book was something like 50 or 60.
Oh, okay, so it'll be a little bit bigger than that.
It'll be a little bit longer, but I hope a lot more entertaining. Although the other book was fine. I had to get it out of my system.
Right.
But certainly more characters and more out and out laughs, I think.
Right.
And as I say, with additional nuggets, which are separate stories, which I've found difficult to include in the narrative, but are worth telling on their own. And some of them are very funny, and things that.
So it's a sort of a mixture of the story of technology and the development of the technology, if you're interested in that stuff.
Yeah.
And there are just a lot of very funny stories from some real characters who've come out with their various sayings and whatever, and things that have happened, that I think will be very enjoyable. So now all you've got to do is come up with a title.
Come up with a title. I mean, Goldie's Paper Chase or something. I don't know. with added nuggets or something. But,
Well, hopefully by the time we edit this video together, we will have a title and we'll have even perhaps an impression of the book, and we can put that at the end.
yeah,
We finally thought of one.
yeah. But there we go. It's
Well, good luck with getting it finished off, Dad.
yeah.
It's very impressive to have written one book, let alone two. So kudos to you for that.
Yeah, well, as a journalists or reporters, when it comes to writing, reporters are really sprinters, you know.
Yes.
And people who write books are more or less marathon people, you see, as you've had experience of
Yes,
marathons.
indeed.
It's a different technique. Yeah. And obviously it takes a bit longer as well, and it's also slightly more exhausting. But it's been great fun, and I hope I shall feel really satisfied when it's finished. And I don't know if I've got the time to produce another one. I'm not sure, but
The next one will be the novel that everyone's supposed to have inside them.
yeah, and like a lot of novels, yes, some of them are best that stay inside. But, anyway, that's
great.
It's fun, and I hope I have conveyed some of the fun and some of the laughs of a very interesting, working life. And no, that's. Please buy it. They say I'm not desperate for the money actually, but no, I wrote it because I wanted to write it,
Yeah.
and that's probably the best reason. And the family might enjoy it, and
I'm sure we will.
I'm sure a wider.
And I'm sure
public
other
will enjoy
people will as well. And good
Yeah.
luck with it. And thank you very much for talking to us
Okay,
today.
my pleasure.
All right. Thanks.
Cheers.